Well, good morning, folks. How are you all this morning? Good. Y'all have a good night. Enjoy the meal last night and the fun. Okay, well, today I am going to try to keep a very complicated subject a little easier. Okay, so good morning. My name is Barbie Casey Booth. I am the owner and nutritionist for Small Ruminant Consulting. And today we're going to talk a little bit about nutrigenomics. Basically, we're going to break it down to feeding and gestation and how we can have an effect on the offspring. Excuse me. So, we'll learn what that big word is, how we can apply it. Can I get away with certain things? Want to talk a little bit about the major issues that we have, mainly ketosis and milk fever, and how they're going to affect your offspring as well, and then some new solutions that are out. So, nutrigenomics, really, really big word that basically means we're using nutrition to then maximize their genetics. Okay? So, feeding to get what we know we have purchased or raised and get that on our farm. It may mean animal health. It may mean feed efficiency. It might mean some production parameters, getting weight gains, all of that. So first things first, you need to know what you're feeding. How do we do that? We send it off to a lab and we get all these big numbers here. All I want you to know is that you should test your forages and either have a nutritionist work on them and be able to plug them into a calculator so that you really know what you're feeding, okay? More importantly, I want you to know a couple concepts here. And it's hard to see today, but when you have an alfalfa hay mix or an alfalfa hay, you're going to have a much higher protein in the 14s to 23% protein level, okay? Most of us look at protein in what we're feeding, I think, and energy. Those are the two big kickers that I hear all the time. If we're feeding a grass hay or a grass hay mix, we might have 8% protein to 10% protein. Okay, obviously this is going to vary depending on where you are in the country and many other things. But know that your grass hays are going to have a lower protein. Also, energies. Typically, now I'm talking real general here, your grass hays are going to have a little lower energy. But if you have a stemmy first cutting alfalfa, stay with me here, guys. There are 3 rations. If you learn anything today, this is what I want you to take home. There are 3 rations. The ration the nutritionist puts together, the ration you put in front of your goats, and the ration your goats actually eat. Sometimes there's a really, really, really big difference between the first and the last. The goal is to make those as close as possible, okay? The goats don't want to eat that stemmy first cutting alfalfa, all the stems. They're going to eat all the leaves, aren't they? So if we send it off and test it, it doesn't mean anything if they're not eating the leaves that were mixed in there. They're really getting like 28% protein because all they're eating is leaves. If you take out those stems, it changes your nutrient value, okay? So keep all that in mind. I can give you numbers all day long, but it comes down to what's going into your goat's mouth. Also note, there is no perfect forage. So if anybody tells you, this is the exact hay you need to go get, or this is the exact pasture mix that you need to use, take that with a grain of salt. okay? No forage is perfect. It's going to change whether there's a drought or a monsoon the next day, okay? And are we cutting it, or are they grazing it at 30 days or 60 days? Is it really young or is it really mature? All of that affects it. It's complicated. Consult a nutritionist, okay? Now, newsflash. We talked a little last night, and you may have heard it if you were there. Animals are like toddlers. They don't eat what they need, okay? They don't want to eat what they need, so sometimes we have to force those things into them. My point being, use a professionally balanced product, okay? Or have a nutritionist balance what you have, okay? For the production stage. What you feed your bucks versus what you feed your kids versus what you feed a lactating doe or a doe in mid-gestation are all very different. So if you're not targeting somehow some different feed changes and you're feeding everything the exact same thing, it's time to re-examine that, okay? So the other most important thing I'd like you to take away today is if you aren't already doing body condition scoring, it's time to start. Now, I don't mean you have to write down this doe is a score 2 after she, dried off, and this doe was a score 4, and do that monthly. I'm not meaning that, okay? We're not all good at keeping track of all that stuff on paper. But at least have visually in your mind, did majority of my does at dry off, were they fat? Were they at a body condition score 4 or 5? Or were they closer to a 2? Or were they looking downright ready to go to the sale barn or die? Okay? Take a visual note so that you know, what do I need to change in my nutrition? And we'll tie that in a little more on how that will help your offspring and genetics. I've got this big chart here, and I don't expect you to know it, nor can you see it real well. But basically, mid-gestation, we want them at an average body condition score, around a 3, okay? Late gestation, we want them at a 3. If they aren't there, we can run into issues on either side. Okay, so target your average body condition score in mid to late gestation. We don't want thin, we don't want fat, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. We talked about minerals last night. Basically, if we are not feeding our balanced minerals, and the major minerals being calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and potassium, those really affect the doe in gestation. We're looking at bone formation on those kids. We're looking at metabolic function of the doe. Okay, how all the processes in her body work and making sure she doesn't get sick and can support that growth of those babies. So, and also the trace minerals. We got immune system function of the doe and the kids that we are really producing there. If we don't work on colostrum production, those kids aren't going to survive. The kids have to be able to make it alive a few hours before they get immunity from that colostrum, okay? And that's all through the placenta. So we've got to make sure we're growing the placenta to grow the baby, to then put weight on so you can sell those babies or make them into more does to keep around for later. Last night we talked a little bit evaluating minerals. I'm not going to get into that heavily, other than organic trace minerals and chelated minerals will get you much farther on many levels than your traditional rock forms. You're going to get better feed efficiency and weight gains. There is research data, and if you want to see it, I'm happy to show it to you. But I have proven it on my farm There are many other farms that have done the same. And let me tell you, if you've got any hoof issues, trace minerals, that's where you need to look at, okay? But it starts at a young age. So we've got to put that in place in those mama does first. The other thing is, again, make sure you're buying minerals that aren't over a year old. If they're going to sit on your farm for 6 months, they don't need to be 6, 8 months when you buy them. And every mineral tag is different, but typically there's going to be a date code, or the place you buy it from is going to be able to tell you what that date is. My point is, just don't let it sit around a year in your barn before you feed it, okay? Make sure they're fresh. Those vitamins degrade first, and that's essential because they can't all cross over the placenta, so those babies are going to need them right away, okay? So, and yes, the babies will start to get some vitamins and minerals and pick at that loose mineral that you might have around. Are they going to get what they need? Not necessarily. They're going to get it from mom's milk and colostrum. So can you guys see that picture? I really just wanted to show you what a goiter looks like, because we brought it up last night for an iodine deficiency. That's a significant one. Don't hold it against me that it's a boar goat. But I don't know if you can see here. Here's the goat's chin, here's the goat's neck, and this goiter is all right here. So it is not the same as a milk goiter. Yeah, a milk goiter is a little different. The other thing is we have bottle jaw from parasites too that we see. This is going to be a little more hard, and you're really, it's almost going to look like an abscess, but it is not going to be soft. And so you're typically going to notice this when the kids are born, and going up to like 60 days of age, you'll see that a little more. The milk goiters, though, you will see is any time that they're on milk there. It's really a different feel, though, is the main point. So the other thing I wanted to point out to y'all, heat stress and cold stress make a difference. And, you know, we can't control the weather unless there's somebody in here that can. Anybody can control the weather? Let me know. I want that magic 8 ball. So the question is, can we stop the heat and cold from becoming a stressor? We can limit it, right? But know that it's going to affect many things. It's going to possibly drop your milk production up to 25%. We're going to lower milk quality. We're going to get more mastitis. We might have less effective heat cycles or estrus. Lower pregnancy rates, more ketosis, which is an energy deficiency. We might have less effective colostrum. The immune system health won't be there because mama's stressed out. Lower birth rates. All of these are affected by weather. So management is key to that. Not just your feeding, but how you manage the temperature control in the barns, or do you have shelter for the animals? Can they get in the shade? Do they have cool water or not frozen water to drink? Those kinds of things. So what can you do to affect the genetics on your farm with nutrition? First thing you can do is work on meeting your forage and your energy demands, but it changes with body capacity. So we're not feeding cows. Cows, we can just keep feeding more and more and more, so they get into that last 30 days and they are eating a ton. They are this bottomless pit that can just keep eating more food. Sheep and goats can't do that. They've got more than one baby in there usually, taking up all that room. So we have to concentrate the energy into a smaller package when you're in late gestation. Energy and protein. All their food, vitamins, minerals, everything, we got to concentrate that down. So my recommendation to you, if this is your style farm, feel free to use your grass haze when you're in early to mid gestation, and then start adding some legumes as you get into late gestation, and especially once you hit lactation. But when you make changes, you need to make them slowly. So I like to tell folks, if you're doing AI and you know exactly when those babies are coming, that's the perfect situation. Now, we don't all have that. We know that life throws curveballs, so that one might have recycled, right? So she's not on schedule with everybody else. We might have a month window or a 3-month window for kidding. My point is, as close as you can get, try to adapt the diet in late gestation before they kid, so that you are not throwing their gut off and giving them a nasty stomach ache right after they have babies. That's just going to stress things out more and affect our colostrum quality once again. So this is a big ugly diagram that just, it haunts me in my sleep, I'll tell you this, okay? It's biochemistry related, and I absolutely hated that in school. But what it comes down to is the does produce, their production priorities go 3 ways. We have muscles, fat, and milk. So, as soon as that baby's born, where is her nutrition going to go first? Is she going to produce milk first? Is she going to put fat on her own back? Or is she going to maintain her muscle? Anything? Anybody? Come on, I got some lovely caramel apple suckers here. Milk. That's right. Sorry, I can't talk and walk apparently too far. Y'all can come up and get some suckers afterwards. How's that? The point is, she's going to put all of her efforts, all of the nutrition that she gets, she's going to put it into milk first, which means she's going to maintain her muscle second, and then fat. So let's think about this. You've got a thin doe. She didn't have any problems, you got lucky, but she's thinner and she's 5 days into milking. Is she going to be, if you feed her more, is she going to gain weight while she's lactating? No. She's going to try to milk more and give all that to her babies all she can, and then she's going to try to maintain her own muscle composition. So fat comes last, right? She's going to stay thin until you dry her off, and then she will start putting some back fat on. So let's talk about gestation. First semester, our priority is embryo survival, right? We want those embryos to stick, and we don't want to lose them because of heat or cold stress. Second trimester is when the placenta grows. Guess what? That determines the size of your babies. Second trimester, mid-gestation. Third trimester, that's where we have the major growth of those kids. Major growth and development. And mammary development of the kids. Those doe kids, if mama is shorted nutrition the last 30 days, I would bet you a steak dinner like last night that doe kid born is not going to be the best milker when she comes into lactation. Okay? Think about that. Colostrum supply, that's the other thing. The last 2 weeks of gestation is when mama makes that colostrum, and the immune system for that baby is really determined those last 2 weeks. So, if we short nutrition in late gestation, we get less reproductive organ development. We get lower fertility and milk production the following year. Have you ever thought about that? Like, man, why didn't these doelings breed? Why did they recycle, or why did this happen? Most of us think to look back the last 6 months. We don't always think to look back a year ago or their mom's nutrition to see what caused that. Also, low birth weights. That's going to minimize our growth potential. So there's our genetics. We're looking at our does and going, or our wethers or buck kids, why are they just not growing? Why aren't they meeting the genetic potential that I thought I bought into at the sale last year? Did we feed them to meet their genetic potential? There's that Nutrigenomics tie there. Those big words. They might never make it to be that high dollar animal that you originally spent time on if you don't put the nutrition into it. Remember, colostrum equals immunity, so shorting that late gestation nutrition will jeopardize that immunity. Also, we need to decrease the metabolic issues. Metabolic issues, okay. Big word that means nutrition that makes the body work. So, less stress on the dam means better milk quality and better recovery time. It also means better colostrum, better milk production, increased kid growth, and immune system health. They aren't all getting pneumonia at the drop of a hat. All of that will maximize your genetic potential if we keep stress at a minimum and nutrition high. Also, here's something. I can debate this for a few hours, and I'll spare your time today, but I want you all to think about this. If the doe isn't feeling well and she has ketosis, milk fever, any of those metabolic problems, or she had a really difficult birth, does she have the same maternal instincts after those babies are born? There's some new research on this. Someone actually studied it. We all know it. That doe has a difficult birth. She is not going to get up and lick that kid off right away. She might need a minute to just take a breath, okay? If she's got ketosis or milk fever, she's trying to survive herself. She's going into survival mode. Her maternal instincts come next. Something to think about. Also, we need to mediate birth weight with our nutrition. So larger birth weights mean an increased risk for kidding problems, okay? Especially late gestation nutrition. Placental size affects birth weight. That's affected by mid-gestation nutrition. Yes? So the question was clarifying birth weights and nutrition there and late gestation. If you push excessive nutrition in late gestation, you can lead to much larger birth weights, creating more twisted kids, bigger kids, more kidding problems for mama. Does that make sense? Okay. So we need to mediate the nutrition. Too little is bad, too much is bad. Also, you might think about this too. If you have kids in the fall, are your kids a little smaller than the kids born other times of the year? Think about that one. Likely they are, or likely they have slower growth rates than others born other times of the year. And that correlates to mom's gestation period during heat stress. Mom is stressed out mid and late gestation. She is trying to survive and get those babies to survive. So typically you get a little smaller kids or slower growth rates. Okay, so let's talk about some of those nutrition issues that we have because nutrition might be off. We might have milk fever. A veterinarian's going to call it hypocalcemia. It just means low calcium, tied to other minerals too. But basically, we've got an imbalance of minerals. She might be a high milk producer. She might have multiple babies. Your forage might be low in magnesium. A nutritionist can really help you dial in those forages, and that's where the tests on these forages are ideal, or at least know what's in your pastures that time of year and what stage of growth they're in, so that we can find out how to mediate those. If you are having milk fever issues, it can be fixed. If you have one or two every year, I like to say, well, unfortunately, that's probably luck of the draw. The goal is to have none, but we can't control which mamas decide to produce more milk or if they're going to have quads and surprise you, because they've only had twins in the past. And so we need to target nutrition for that. The other thing is ketosis. It's a big word that means she has an energy deficiency. And this usually happens the last 2 to 3 weeks in gestation. Really, the last 1 to 2 weeks is where it hits hard. Some of you may have heard of pregnancy toxemia. Is that the same thing? Yeah, pretty much. Ketosis, energy deficiency leads to pregnancy toxemia, which basically means that mama is going to try to survive and the babies are dying. Okay, at that point, when it hits toxemia stage, that means you've got a dark, smelly discharge likely. It's time to save your mama, because you're probably not going to save your babies. You might have one live one in there still, but if one has started dying and decomposing, that's a problem. But the signs of an energy deficiency are similar to milk fever. We're going to have them go off feed. And I apologize. Yes, guys, that is a picture of a sheep. It is not a goat. You're not seeing things. So they might have stiff or slow movement. Maybe their knees won't bend and they're just kind of walking slow, but maybe they are like ouchy on their feet. You know, they're hesitant to step down. They also, it's hard to catch sometimes, acetone smelling breath. Their breath smells different, and you will notice a difference. I'll be honest, I've only had a couple that I've noticed that. And I think there's a main reason why, because often we're getting subclinical cases. And what does that mean? We got a touch. Just a touch of energy deficiency and a touch of calcium deficiency, and they're working together and giving us the same signals. So it's hard to diagnose. Cattle, they don't like to do that. They give us clear signs and we don't have to guess. But sheep and goats both are bad about that. So often we need to treat for both. So what causes ketosis? The last few weeks of gestation, we just aren't providing enough energy for her. Now, multiple babies, we're getting low blood glucose on mama. Some of you have probably heard of gestational diabetes in humans. Similar situation, okay? Same kind of things happening. There's an insulin and fat energy response. It's all really complicated. But basically, mama can't get that energy to herself and the babies. So we're running into issues. And here's another catcher. I'm going to throw you for a loop. Has anybody had a really fat goat go down when they going to have babies? The goal is not to have a fat goat. And not many Kikos are going to be super fat. But I'll tell you what, if you go in the show ring, you're going to see some fat does. We don't want to limit the nutrition later in gestation. So how do we deal with that? She can't pull that fat fast enough from her back to feed her babies. So she has the same issue as the really thin doe. Fat does and thin does, both are a bad situation when we're talking late gestation. So what can you get away with? That's what it boils down to, right? You have a drought, you have a forage shortage, you have high prices in grain, but you have a good average body condition score. They're not fat, they're not thin. Can we limit nutrition in early gestation? Can we give them the cheaper feeds in early gestation and get away with it? Some say a little bit, some say no. The answer is yes. Early gestation you can, as long as you're not dramatically changing it, okay? If we've got super fat does, now is the time to try and change their body condition if you didn't already while they were dry. You still want those embryos to survive, okay? So you got to use caution. But can we get away with a little lower quality nutrition in early gestation, that first trimester? Absolutely. Mid-gestation? Absolutely not. You get into that second trimester, that's where we got development going on. We got the placental development. We got some fetal growth going on. Don't limit nutrition. How about the fat does in late gestation? Do we limit nutrition in late gestation? Do you hold them back because you think you're going to have ketosis issues? No. That is not the time. You are going, feed them as normal. Prepare yourself for having ketosis and have all those solutions available. And then after you wean those kids, if she hasn't milked all that fat off of her back, then you can work on her body condition, okay? Now, I'll tell you, if you have, does anybody have an accelerated system where they're kidding twice a year, the same doe, or 3 times in 2 years? Not on purpose. Exactly. That's what I hear a lot. Well, those ones that do get bred accidentally and have that, we might want to watch them for energy issues. But that's where you definitely need to consult a nutritionist if you have that situation, because we want to prevent those. Those issues are magnified when you have a system like that. So most of you were here last night. I talked a little bit about prevention being key, preventing all those metabolic issues in late gestation and early lactation. $22.50 a doe versus the veterinary expense, the cost, the time that I didn't even put on a value in there. So we're probably up to $50 and losing the does and the kids too. So prevention is key. You might hear ketosis you can treat with propylene glycol. I want to advise you a little bit to be careful with that, because you tend to get, if you have a severe case, you might have to give propylene glycol every 8 to 12 hours. And if you've done that more than twice, that's like going to bed after drinking a lot of alcohol one evening and not eating anything with it. You are going to wake up with a stomach ache and whatever digestive issues the next day, okay? We are throwing her gut off, and we're killing the bugs that help work for us. My job every day is to figure out how to feed those bugs to make it work. Propylene glycol is great. It's the easiest form of energy and sugar you could ever get, but it can dilute the gut if we use too much of it. So be advised of that. Remember, if you get milk fever, treat for ketosis too, in case you have multiple things going on. Guys, if you need some Evo 911, we're treating gut health, we're treating ketosis, we're treating milk fever, we're giving an appetite enhancer with some vitamins in there and boosting the immune system, all in that paste. So know that's available. You won't have to debate which treatment to give. You don't have to worry about their gut health going off and them going off feed and having to give steroids and everything else. So know that I have some here today. If you would like some, you can get it for $30. I'll gladly set you up. I do have plenty, and I'll be here till about at least noon. But I can also connect you with other customers if you're having issues that might be going through similar situations that you have. I want you to know about something coming out here. It's called Evo Tonic. And these flyers are out there a bit. If you don't see one, you can grab one for me before you leave. But it has Evo 911 on it. It has Evo Tonic on the back, so you can take those as a reminder, stick it in your pocket. Evo Tonic is something I saw in the dairy cattle industry. They've been using it for 20 to 30 years. And no one wants to bring this technology to the sheep and goat world. Why? It's not that they don't want to help you. It's that they're large companies that want tonnage and profit, okay? I got really sick of not being able to find answers, so I made it. This product, you feed it late gestation, at least the last 2 weeks if you want to increase colostrum amount and increase the quality, so immune system. It also affects mama's immune system. Prevents ketosis and helps partition or helps move that energy around a little better. She can mobilize the fat on her back that she couldn't before with the help of this. Then, let's say you don't want to feed it in late gestation. You feed it the first 30 days of lactation, and you get added milk production, improved immune system of the babies. Obviously, that depends on if you fed it with colostrum or not. More milk means better gains, and you get better feed efficiency on the mamas. 1 ounce a day. It's a pelleted top dress. My recommendation is feed it last 60 days of gestation and 30 days into lactation. You don't want to feed it 60 days into lactation for 2 reasons. 1, it's too expensive. I don't want to cost you any more money than you have to. You will get returns on your investment, absolutely, if you feed it last 30 days of gestation and 30 days into lactation. But cost, and you want to dry those does up, right? It's going to be really hard to dry these does up if you haven't taken them off Evo Tonic at least a week before drying them up, because it's pushing more milk production. Okay? You can feed it to fat ewes, you can feed it use does. You can feed it to fat does and you can feed it to thin does. It's not going to make a difference because it's all about how they use their energy. So I gave you a lot. I gave you a lot of information and probably talked really high up, but I'm happy to answer any questions and let me know if something was not clear at all. Questions? Concerns? Specific farm troubleshooting? Yes. Where am I based out of? That's a good question. I live in Ohio, southwest Ohio, north of Cincinnati. I work with farms all over the U.S. I have farms in Utah, Oregon, California, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, all of the Midwest, basically, all the way over to New York and Vermont and New Hampshire. Do I have any in Florida? Yes. Florida and Georgia, absolutely. Sorry, I forgot the Southeast. What am I doing? Yes, absolutely I do. Goats in particular. I do work with sheep, goats, and cattle, also deer. They happen to eat kind of the same things. Believe it or not, in Michigan, we actually feed the deer so you can hunt them. Goat questions, nutrition, management, late gestation. Okay, I will be around. Feel free to contact me. Grab you some candy up here. I believe we have another speaker that wants to talk to you about bucks. Guys, if you're interested in Evo 911, I'm going to stand back here a little bit so that Eric can come up and talk. But it is $30, cash, check, Venmo, all the above.